Good morning and welcome to the fifth and final episode of the Surfing the Tsunami of Sustainability Compliance workshop series by TEIMAS. Today, we wrap up our journey with a focus on a crucial topic, the waste shipment regulation, led by Cristina Vázquez, CEO of TEIMAS. Before we begin, let me quickly remind you of the aim of this training series is to help large waste-producing companies navigate the evolving landscape of European sustainability regulations with confidence. Over the past few months, we have aimed to provide practical insights and guidance to help you stay ahead of the curve. We began with 2 introductory sessions, covering key aspects of 7 major European sustainability regulations, followed by 3 specialized sessions. One about the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSRD, the second one talking about the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, CS3D, and finally today's topic, the waste shipment regulations. We appreciate your participation in this series and hope you find this final session insightful as we explore the complexities and latest updates of the waste shipment regulation. Let's get started.
Thank you, Miguel. First of all, I'd like to take a minute to clarify 3 key points that will help us understand the main aspects of Regulation 2024-1157. First, as mentioned in the opening session, regulations are a kind of legal act that are binding in all EU member states. Regulations are directly enforceable without the need for a transposition into a national law. Second, it's important to understand that the date of entry into force and the date of application of a legal act are actually different concepts. The entry into force date indicates when the regulation officially becomes valid and legally binding. However, the obligation it introduces may only take effect at a later stage, which is the date of application. This is the case with this regulation, as we will see today. Third and last, when we talk about OECD, we refer to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's an international body where multiple countries collaborate to address economic, social, and environmental challenges arising from globalization and countries' interdependence. Now, after these 3 clarifications, let's dive into the highlights of the new European Waste Shipment Regulation. Well, as its name suggests, this is a regulation. It means that it's directly enforceable and it does not require any transposition. It entered into force in May 2024, making it already valid. However, its obligations will begin in May 2026. This regulation governs the transfer of waste in these 4 situations: between European Union member states, export waste from the EU to third countries, import waste from third countries into the EU, and transit of waste between third countries that passes through the EU. When waste needs to be transported under this new regulation, there are 3 scenarios. The General Information Procedure applies, or the PIC procedure applies, or the shipments it's not permitted. Broadly speaking, what does each of them consist of? The General Information Procedure requires a contract and a transfer document, which is what we know as Annex 7. The PIC procedure requires more things: a contract, a notification document with the content of Annex 1A, an insurance, additional documentation, and the transfer document with Annex 1B content. And how to know which is the right one? The applicable procedure depends on 3 factors. First, geographic location. It's important to know if the origin and destination facilities are within the EU, if the shipments will be made between the EU and OECD countries, or between the EU and non-OECD countries without agreements. Second, waste classification. It's important to identify the right waste code from Annexes 3, 3A, 3B, or Annex 4. In the annexes 3, 3A and 3B, we can find the materials that are less dangerous for the environment. This classification is also known as the green list. Within the Annex 4, we can find other kinds of waste that represent a higher level of danger for the environment. These wastes are also known as the amber list. And I would like to mention the Annex 5 too. It describes the waste list that cannot be exported to non-OECD countries for a recovery treatment. Annex 5 describes in detail the conditions that the notifiers should take into account. And finally, the third point is the waste treatment, recovery or disposal. But if we are sending a waste to an intermediate treatment, it's also important to know the new destinations until the final treatment. Taking into account these three factors, geographic location, waste classification, and waste treatment, we could know if a shipment falls under the General Information Procedure, the Prior and Informed Consent Procedure, or if it is prohibited. Let's review now the top 10 key updates in Regulations 2024-1157. 1. Stricter rules for waste exports. The regulation increases requirements for waste exports in order to fight against illegal waste shipments. In the last 20 years, waste exports have increased by 72%. This is a huge challenge and, as you can imagine, as waste exports increase, so do illegal shipments. These new regulations aim to guarantee that waste will be treated in an environmentally sustainable way. 2. Exports for disposal will be highly controlled. In general, exports for disposal are not permitted. If disposal is necessary, the notifier must now demonstrate that waste can't be treated in the origin country. The notifier must demonstrate that it's not technically or economically viable. This has raised significant concerns, and the European Commission is working to define the criteria for proving this lack of feasibility by May 2027. Third, changes for plastic waste exports to OECD countries. From May 2026, exports of non-hazardous plastic waste to OECD countries must follow the PIC procedure. Plastics are a priority concern from the European Union, so they will be highly controlled. In addition, European Commission will explicitly monitor these transfers. 4. Changes for plastic waste exports to non-OECD countries. Continuing with plastics, exports of non-hazardous plastic waste to non-OECD countries will be banned starting November 2026. These exports won't be permitted for at least 2 years and a half. 5. Non-OECD countries must inform the European Union about their intentions. From May 2027, waste exports from the EU to non-OECD countries will only be allowed if those countries inform the European Commission that they really want to import the waste and demonstrate sustainable management capacity. If you are currently working with suppliers from any of these countries, it's recommended that you inform them of this situation. There will be a list of non-OECD countries describing what is the procedure to export waste to each of them. It will be possible to send waste using the general procedure, applying the PIC procedure, applying another national procedure, or export can be banned. If the country doesn't appear on the list, the shipments are not permitted. In the specific case of plastics, 5 years after the regulations entering into force, non-OECD countries may request permission from the European Commission to import plastic waste. If there is a positive evaluation, European Union will finish the ban on that country. 6. Audits for waste exporters. All European companies exporting waste outside the EU must be sure that receiving facilities undergo independent audits. That audit must demonstrate that the facility will manage the waste in a proper way. There will be a repository of audits, so if there is a valid audit for a facility, the notifier can use it. But if someone needs to do a new one, they must share it in the repository with others. 7. Digital platform. The new regulation will use digital procedures to document the waste shipments in the European Union. The new digital platform will be ready in May 2026, and the digital requirements will be published in 2025. 8. Simplified procedures for pre-authorized facilities. For facilities with pre-authorization, certain deadlines are reduced, and the validity of the PIC procedure can be extended. Recovery facilities can make a request for this authorization in its country, but be careful, because the facilities that only do R13 operation won't be admissible. 9. There are also changes to documentation. Although the procedures are the same, regulation introduces some updates to required documentation. For example, in Annex 7, if you send waste for intermediate recovery operations, R12 or R13, you must inform the planned final recovery facilities, or all the next ones. Also, in Annex 7, recovery facilities must fill out a new section in the document, providing the date of recovery completion and the weight of treated waste. This data must be filled out within the 30 days of the operation conclusions and no later than 1 year after receiving the waste. 10. Digitalisation and traceability. Finally, I want to stress that the Regulation 2024-1157, as others in the European Union, focuses on transparency, traceability, and digitalization. Fighting against illegal trafficking is not easy. The text is very long and includes many exceptions, but I hope this brief summary has been useful. Thank you so much for your attention. I give the floor back to Miguel.
Thank you all for joining us today as we explore the complexity of the new waste shipments regulation. As we have seen, the regulation addresses some of the most pressing challenges in waste management, including the rise in waste exports from the European Union and the need for greater environmental responsibility. With these new rules set out in European regulation, we are moving towards a more sustainable and transparent system, supporting the circular economy while curbing waste crime. Let's quickly recap the key takeaways from today's session. Enhancing traceability and transparency. The new regulation introduced mandatory independent audits for facilities in third countries receiving waste exports, ensuring that they meet high environmental standards. Stricter rules to combat waste crime. With rising incidents of illegal waste trafficking, the regulation tightens export conditions, particularly to non-OECD countries. Stricter compliance requirements and enhanced cooperation between European states aim to tackle one of the most severe environmental crimes. Digitalisation of procedures. Starting from May 2026, all waste shipment procedures will be fully digitized. This move is designed to streamline operations, enhance transparency, and improve the tracking of waste shipments, making it easier to identify and prevent illegal activities. These measures mark a significant shift in the way Europe handles waste exports, setting a new standard for environmental protection and corporate responsibility. Before we wrap up, I want to thank you for your active participation today and throughout this entire workshop series. We hope that the insights gained here will help your companies adapt to these upcoming challenges, enabling you to navigate the new regulatory landscape with confidence. Remember that you can find all the episodes covering the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSRD, the Eco-Design Regulation, the Due Diligence Directive CS3D, the Green Claims Directive, Critical Raw Materials Regulation, Packaging Regulation, and now the Waste Shipment Regulation on tsunami.teimas.com. Let's keep on working together towards a more sustainable future. Thank you and see you next time.
Thank you.